Hello and welcome to the XML tutorial for beginners. This is part 2. In this video we are going to learn the XML rules and how we can read XML by writing a simple program. Now XML is more strict than HTML, so there are certain rules that we need to follow when we create our XML document. If you don't follow the rules, your XML will be rejected. So let us get started. The first rule is regarding the XML declaration. So every XML document starts with an XML declaration. Now here in this example we have the root element, but there is no XML declaration. So this is incorrect. The correct way to write the XML document is to first of all put the XML declaration. So every XML document starts with less than $XML, and then we have to give the version of the XML, and we can give the optional encoding also. And after the XML declaration we have the root element. The root element here is emails. This is the emails opening tag, and this is the emails closing tag. The next XML rule is regarding the root element. The XML document should have exactly one root element. Now what is the problem with this example? It does have the XML declaration at the beginning, and then it has the root element. So we have the opening tag of the root element, then we have the closing tag of the root element. Now the problem is that everything else within this XML document should be within the root element. This is not the case. After the root element ends, we have another opening tag and closing tag. So that is the problem with this XML document. The next XML rule is regarding the opening and the closing tag. So each XML element must have an opening tag and a closing tag. So let us see an example. So we have some XML element where member is the opening tag, then we have the role opening tag, and the role is father. Then we have the member closing tag. Now in XML the elements have to be correctly nested. So the role should be totally within the member XML element. Why? Because role is a child element of the member XML element. So this is not the case. That is why this is incorrect. The correct way to represent this XML is to have the member opening tag, then the role opening tag, then we have the value, then the role closing tag, and the member closing tag. It is also possible that we don't have the value in the XML element. So in that case we can just leave it as blank. So there is a shortcut available in XML, and that is with a self closing tag. We don't have to repeat role opening tag and role closing tag. We can just put role /. Now let us see the guidelines for naming the tags. Few guidelines for naming the XML tags are as follows. First of all, keep in mind that the XML tags are named by the author. So if you are the one who is creating the XML document, you have to make sure that the tags are meaningful and they follow certain rules, because XML documents can be read by human beings and they can be read by software applications both. The first guideline is that the tags should be meaningful. So an example of a meaningful tag name is name, which indicates a name of a person or a thing. But if we put first underscore tag, that is not meaningful. It just indicates that this is the first tag. Or N may stand for name, it may stand for notes, it can stand for something else also. So always have meaningful tags so other people can understand it, and software application can also understand it. The developer who is writing the software application should be able to understand what data is there. The next guideline for naming tags is that the tags should not be too long. So this is a good tag, age, but if we write a very long tag like the current age of member, so this is not readable. It is going to take too long for a human being to read it also, and when the developer writes the code to read the XML, it's going to take a longer time. So have tags that are meaningful but not too long. Now this is a very important guideline. XML tags are case sensitive. So the opening and the closing tags must have the same case. So the correct opening tag is occupation, and we have the correct closing tag which is /occupation. But if you notice this example here, the O is capitalized in the opening tag, so which is incorrect because XML tags are case sensitive. We should not start any XML element name with XML capital X or any other variation. This is a guideline because sometimes the application may get confused whether a particular element is an element or it's some kind of a declaration. So don't include the characters XML in your tag names. The next XML rule is regarding the correct nesting. So here we have an XML. So we have the member opening tag and we have the member closing tag here. And if we see, the name opening tag and the name closing tag overlaps the member XML element. This is not allowed. Why? Because name is a child element of the member element and it should be totally within the parent element. The correct way to write this XML is to have the member opening tag at the beginning and have the member closing tag at the end, and within this we can give the name opening tag, then the value and the name closing tag. Just like HTML, we can have comments in XML and we can have comments after the XML declaration. Why after? Because XML declaration is a place which indicates to the software application or the browser that what follows is an XML document. So comments are allowed only after the XML declaration. So here we have the root element which is family members. So family members opening tag is here, and we have the family members closing tag here, and in between we have the XML comment. So XML comment starts with less than, exclamation, minus, minus, and then we can give any text, and it ends with minus, minus, greater than. The purpose of XML comments is to make the XML more readable. You can write your own comments to give additional information, but the comments are going to be ignored by the XML parser or the XML processor. Now we come to the important rules for naming the tags. So XML tag names can contain letters, numbers, or other characters also. So for example, we can have letters and we can have digits also, or we can have like primary underscore occupation. We can include other characters also. But XML tag names cannot start with a digit or a hyphen or a dot. And also XML tag names, they cannot contain spaces. So let us look at an example now. So here we have an XML document. So in the beginning you can see we have the XML declaration, then we have the comment, and the root element is the employees. Now employees has exactly one child element which is called the employee, and within employee we have the child elements like the first name and the last name and the hobby, etc. So the first thing is that can we put a digit in the beginning? So let us say I want to give the opening tag name as one first underscore name, and I give the closing tag as one first underscore name. So if we open it in the browser, so you see that we get an XML parsing error. The browser complains that this XML is not well formed. A well formed XML means that it follows all the XML rules. So it is rejected. So same thing we can give for a minus sign also, or a dot also, or let us try to put spaces here. So I have given the opening tag and the closing tag. So obviously the opening tag and the closing tag have to be the same. So but we have included a space here. So let us try with this. So again, the browser rejects it. It says this is an XML parsing error, it's not well formed. But we can use other characters like underscore to separate out the words. Whatever scheme you use, you should follow it. You can use underscore to separate the words, or you can use camel case notation, or you can use proper case notation. So now if we open it, then this XML is correct. Now let us go back. XML tags can also not contain these characters, exclamation sign, double quotes, etc. Now let us look at an XML rule for the XML attributes. So XML elements can have attributes. What are attributes? Attributes give additional data about the XML element. So let us look at an example. So this is an XML element. The tag name is hobby. So we have the hobby opening tag here, and we have the hobby closing tag here, and we have the value as gardening. But let's say we want to give some additional information. What is the schedule of the hobby? So if it is daily, weekly, monthly, anything, so we can include an attribute. So the attribute name is schedule and its value is weekly. Whatever value we give for the attribute, that has to be enclosed within either both double quotes at the beginning and the end, or single quotes at the beginning or the end. So we have already seen that attribute text should be within double quotes or single quotes. So we have seen the example of using double quotes here. So we can have, let's say, an XML element of name, and here the attribute is last underscore name, and we can have the attribute text in single quotes also, one single quote at the beginning and one single quote at the end. Sometimes it is possible that the attribute text or the attribute value includes a single quote or a double quote. Then we have to use both double quotes and single quotes. So an example is, let us say the name XML element has a last underscore name attribute, and the value of that attribute is O'Reilly, but after O there is an apostrophe. So this is allowed because we are including the attribute value within the double quotes at the beginning and the end. In case you have a double quote within the attribute text, you can enclose the entire attribute text by single quotes. Now let us come to an important topic in XML, and that is for character entity references. So there are some characters which have special meanings in XML. So these characters are the double quote, ampersand sign, apostrophe, less than, and greater than. So let us say we want to include quote. So instead of just writing the double quote, we have to give the entity reference, which is ampersand followed by some symbols. In the case of a double quote, it is QUOT and ending with a semicolon. So here, for example, we want to include the XML value surfing within double quotes. So we have to give one double quote entity reference in the beginning and one at the end. Same thing for the ampersand sign. We cannot just have ampersand as a part of the XML value, so we have to use this character entity reference for that. Same thing for the apostrophe symbol also, and same thing for less than sign and greater than sign. This is similar to the HTML entity references. So let us say that your XML element has a value and you want to put this. So you want to put less than, he, greater than, double quotes, ampersand, something, you know. So you cannot simply put this text as a XML value because it is going to give an error. Why? because when it sees the less than sign has a special meaning in XML, so it is going to assume that this is some kind of a tag and it is going to interpret it in that way. But using character entity references, we can have this in the XML value. So here what all we need to do is replace each of these characters with the character entity reference. So for example, for less than we have to put ampersand LT semicolon. For greater than we can put this thing. So the result you can see over here. So you see exactly, so he is enclosed by the angle brackets and surfing and other stuff is within double quotes, and we can put apostrophe ampersand, all these things by using the character entity reference. So in XML there is a concept of well-formedness. What a well-formed XML document means is that your XML document follows the XML rules. So there is no rule violation in your XML. So when your XML document is well formed, only then you should provide it to another person, or you provide it to a software application for reading it. Now let us go to how we can write the program for reading the XML. We have already seen XML Notepad 2007 that we can use to write the XML document. Now let us see how we can read the XML document. And the XML document that we are going to read is this employee XML document. So I'm going to write this program within HTML. So first of all, I put the HTML opening and closing tags because this is an HTML document. Then I'm going to have the head section and the body section, and then I'm going to include a script within the head section. So I'm going to have some JavaScript code that is going to read this XML document. So I create some variables. So first of all, I have the XML object. XML object, I'm going to put the XML HTTP request. So how exactly we put it, we'll see. Then we have the doc object. This is going to contain the XML representation. Then we have a couple of variables. We want to read the name and the date of joining of the employee. So the first line of code that we need to write is XML object is new XML HTTP request. Then the important line of code is we call the open method on the XML object. So the first argument of this method is what type of open method we want to use, whether we want to use get or post. So get is faster, that is why I've used it. The second argument of this method is the location of the XML file. So in the same folder I have the employee.xml file. So I'm going to open that. And the last argument of this method is what is the asynchronous, whether it is asynchronous or synchronous. So false means it is a synchronous opening. So we can use false for smaller XML documents, and we can use true if the XML document is large, and there are other factors also. Then we call the send method on the XML object. So this sends a request to the server, and we actually get the XML. Now we get the response XML. Response XML returns the XML representation, and this we store in the doc object variable. Now further on in this JavaScript, we are going to be using the doc object only. So these are like some standard lines of code that we can use to open any XML file and have its representation in some variable. So the first thing we do is we put the method of get elements by tag name. So we can call it on the response XML that is returned to us, and there we search for first underscore name. So the very first name is represented by 0 because it's an array, starting with 0, and the very first child node and the node value. So that we put in the HTML web page. Name is equal to name variable, whatever value we got for the first underscore name. Then same thing we can do for the date of joining also. So if you notice, the first underscore name is directly under employee, but the date of joining is a parent XML element because it has 3 children, day, month and year. So we are expecting 12th January 2014 to come here. So we can again use the get elements by tag name, and this time we are interested in finding the day. Then so we concatenate that by putting date of joining plus get elements by tag name of month, and same thing we do, date of joining plus get elements by tag name of year. So now date of joining has the complete string available in it. So we write document.write date of joining is this. So let us execute this, and here we can see that we got name is equal to John. So it has gone into the XML file and extracted the first underscore name XML element. Then date of joining is equal to, it has concatenated 3 elements value, day, month and year. So that is how we can read the XML document. Now let us say that we enhance this file instead of having a single employee. So I have put 3 employees here. So here in employee we have an attribute ID and the value is 1. The second employee ID value is 100, and the third employee ID attribute value is 101. So let us see how we can get data from all the elements of the XML. So for that the code is very similar. So in the beginning you remember that we put new XML HTTP request, then we called the open method, then we called the send method, then we got response XML. So here the only difference from the last program is that we call the method get elements by tag name employee and put that in the employees array. Now employees array, instead of containing data about just one employee, it's going to contain data of all the employees, whether there are 3 employees or 100 employees. Then we run a for loop, and for counter is equal to 0, counter less than employees array dot length. So if there are going to be 3 elements in the array, so employees array dot length is going to be 3. So we are running a for loop from 0 to 2. So it is going to run 3 times for the counter value of 0, then second time it is going to run for counter value of 1, and the last time it is going to run for counter value of 2, and every time we increment the counter by plus plus. This is a standard JavaScript for loop. Next what we do is the same thing as the last program, get elements by tag name, put first underscore name, but instead of giving the value 0 as in the last program, here we get the counter, because we are not interested in always getting the data for the first employee. We want to get the data of all the employees. So first time counter is going to be 0, so it is going to get the name of the first employee. The second time the loop runs, the counter is going to be 1, so it is going to get the name of the second employee, and so on. So we write that value. Then the difference from the last program is that here we are trying to get a attribute value, because if you look at the department, now department XML element has an attribute called role. So where this is manager for John Devon employee, and the name of the department is sales. If we look at data for the second employee, the role is developer. So Irene Bishop is a developer in engineering. So how we get the attribute is by using the get attribute method. So we specify the name of the attribute, which is role, and getting the department is the same as getting the name. Using get elements by tag name, we can get the department. So let us run this now and see. So we are getting name is John and position is manager in sales. So this data is coming from both the department value and the attribute value. So sales is the department and the attribute is manager. So engineering is the department and role is developer. Engineering is the department and role is the QA. So like this, we can see that using a simple program, we can read the XML provided we know the structure of the XML. We have a sample XML document. We can use that to write our program. So here I have used JavaScript, but you can use any programming language to read the XML document. Whether you use Java, C++ or C#, you can do this. So thank you for attending this video, and thanks once again.